Hey guys and girls, sorry. I don't know what's going on with the tech issues today. Setup that we've used for like a year just wasn't connecting to StreamYard. Like none of the cameras, none of the microphones. There are gremlins within the computer apparently today, which happened on WebSluice when I was on there just before too. I logged in, it was making weird noises. So I don't know. We'll figure it out though. Good to see you all. Good to be back. Hopefully my camera works. Let me just do this. Get my stupid face off here. There we go. Hey, there we go. Hey, good to see you. Hey, we're back. We're back. We're back for day 309 million. That's how many days we've done a trial so far. 365 billion. No, it's day 18. I feel like I'm on Star Trek, day 18, Captain's Log, supplemental. And that's I'm on a new planet and I'm reporting my surroundings to you. It has been a long trial so far. This is week 4. Day 18, even though it's been spread over 4 weeks, but that's just sort of how it works. Let me get this. So today was a very short day at trial. We sort of got into court. They're like, did some legal stuff that they do every morning, sort of like some housekeeping. And they're like, all right, we call a witness. And we're like, okay, great. We're going to hear from the doctor, the intensive care doctor at the Austin. And I was like, great, we get to hear from the Austin people finally. Then they finish with that and they're like, oh, yeah, we're done for today. See you on Monday. They were like, that's it. We're out. It was like 11:45. They're like, we're done for today. Come back Monday for more Erin Patterson trial. And I was like, okay, uh, sure, we could do that. So, what? Okay. Yeah. So that was it. That was it for today. We have one witness. One. Just one. And if I bring it up here, I will talk to you about it. If I can get the correct document. That is not my document. All right. Hold on, guys. Let me pull this one up. Should be this one. Sorry. I I tried to shovel down some food before the show because I was busy on WebSluice, and then I came onto here. So I was like, I should eat something before I get on there because otherwise my stomach goes mental. And people are like, we can hear your stomach growling, ping. And I was like, wow, I should eat something. So I shoveled down some food, but apparently not fast enough, according to my stomach. All right. All right. So they called Professor Stefan Warillo. And what does he do? Well, he's the director of intensive care at the Austin Health. Hold on a sec. All right. That'll teach me for trying to eat before I come on here. All right. Director of intensive care at Austin Health. They said, did you occupy that role in July and August of 2023? He said he does. He has various qualifications, including a Bachelor of Medicine, a Bachelor of Surgery from the University of Melbourne. He also has a PhD from the University of Melbourne, so very, very educated fellow. And he's been various fellowships, including the Royal Australian College of Physicians and the College of Intensive Care Medicine. And he says that is correct. And they said, you have a graduate certificate of emergency health from Monash University. He says, yes, that is correct. They're just trying to demonstrate he has quite a record in medicine. And they go down here and the first patient they talk about arriving at the Austin is Don Patterson. And they say here, okay, this is Miss Lenthal, by the way, for the prosecution. She says, I'm going to start with the patient you treated, Donald Patterson. Did Donald arrive did he arrive at the Austin Health Hospital on the 31st of July, 2:30 p.m. by ambulance? And he says, yes, he did. And he says, was he transferred from Dandenong? And he says, that is my recollection. And they say, was the first of the four patients that you came to deal with, and was he the first of the four? Yes. They said, did you receive his clinical history of his presentation? And he says, we did. He says, we were contacted by our colleagues at Dandenong Hospital. And they go down here and they talk about that he had reported some initial symptoms that were reported that include acute onset vomiting. Now you're going to have to, these medical words often get me. Hematemesis. And they said, what is that? And they say that is vomiting with blood in it. And they said he also had bloody diarrhea. And they say, indeed, yes. And they said the symptoms started for Don Patterson on the evening of Saturday, 29th of July. Is that correct? And he says, yes, that is what we were advised, that he had attended Korumburra and then he was transferred to Dandenong. And then at Dandenong, he was diagnosed with acute liver failure on the 31st of July. And he says that is all correct. And they said the case of the acute liver failure was most likely to be Amanita mushrooms. And he says that is correct. And they say he was referred to the Austin in the anticipation of rapidly deteriorating and needing advanced therapies. And they said that is correct. They said, why was the Austin the preferred destination for a patient like Donald Patterson? And Professor replies, the Austin hosts a state liver transplant service, and so any patient from Victoria or adjacent regions in nearby states would be referred to our service. Because we have a comprehensive program to support patients with specific liver problems, up and including liver transplantation if needed. And they ask him, has the Austin treated patients with Amanita poisoning before? And he says, yes. They ask him, have you been involved in the care of patients with Amanita poisoning before? And he says, yes, I have. They ask him, what was Donald's condition when he arrived at the Austin? He replies, Donald was critically ill and in multiple organ failure. And they say, there was various blood tests that indicated he was critically unwell, and the professor replies, yes. So we identified that he had a severe liver injury and severe liver failure, and they had measured specific substances in the blood, such as, I'm not even going to pronounce this, but transaminase. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And they saying it was extremely high, consistent with a severe or massive liver injury. He says, we also saw that his blood clotting measurements were grossly abnormal, consistent with liver failure. He had a range of other abnormalities, including a buildup of acid in the blood and a buildup of ammonia in the blood. And they ask him, was Donald receiving various treatments when he arrived at the Austin? And the professor replies, he was. Our colleagues at Dandenong had already commenced a range of treatments to try and help and support him. Then they said, was he sedated and intubated? And they said, that's correct. They said, was he in an induced coma? And they say, he was on a breathing machine, so on life support ventilation, with a tube down his windpipe through his mouth and receiving medication to assist in his comfort during that time. And they said, now, were various tests carried out to try and pinpoint the cause of Donald's acute liver failure? And the professor replies, yes, a range of investigations were undertaken to try and find other possible causes. Those include blood tests, some imaging, ultrasounds, to try and test for specific viruses that can cause liver failure, to try and make sure that there wasn't another reason or possible cause for why he was so sick. They ask, what were the results of those tests? And the professor says there was no evidence of any other cause for his acute liver failure. Then they ask, what did you and the team at the Austin ultimately accept was the cause of the acute liver failure to be for Donald? And he says, Amanita mushroom poisoning causing acute liver failure. And they ask, was that because of the known consumption of mushrooms by Donald and others? He says, yes, we had been alerted to a cluster of patients that we were advised, had consumed the same meal and that it contained mushrooms and that they had all become very unwell. And he said, this is not an unusual story for Amanita. And they said, what was the diagnosis also made of the clinical cause they said, was that diagnosis also made because of a clinical cause highly consistent with Amanita mushroom ingestion? He says, absolutely. His clinical course was pretty typical for a severe poisoning of Amanita mushrooms. And they said, did Donald receive a number of treatments at the Austin? He says he was on a great many treatments here at the Austin in ICU. And they said, is one of the specific treatments he received multi-dose activated charcoal? And they said that is correct. And they say, what was the purpose of that treatment? And he replies, so once the Amanita poison is within the body, unfortunately the body tends to recycle it internally. And that can actually cause persisting injury to the liver. So the activated charcoal is an attempt to medically remove the Amanita poisoning from the bowel and to have it excreted from the body so the recycling process is interrupted. They also ask him if he received IV silibinin, and he says he did. So silibinin is the antidote to Amanita poisoning. And they say here, it's one of the recommended therapies to try and reduce the uptake of Amanita toxin into the liver cells. They said they're asking him, did you also administer a high dose of NAC? And it's called acetylcysteine. That's the first time I've ever tried to pronounce it, but they call it NAC or NAC. And it's more commonly referred to in medical field as NAC. And it's widely recommended for use in Amanita mushroom poisoning with liver failure. It's also used in other cases of liver failure where it is known to have beneficial effects. And they said, so Donald was receiving aggressive treatment at the Austin. Is that right? And the professor replies, he was on a lot of very intense treatments in the ICU at the Austin. They said by the next day, the day after the 31st of July, which is the 1st of August, how was Donald's condition? The professor says he continued to deteriorate despite very aggressive treatment. Really, the measures that we were observing, both clinically and on investigation, were moving in the wrong direction. We were very, very worried about his progress. He was getting worse. And they ask him, did the Austin commence some additional treatments at the time, including a vitamin C and a plasma exchange? And they say that's correct. Vitamin C has been suggested by some experts that it might have some benefits for antioxidant properties, specifically for this condition. So we commence that. And a plasma exchange also has potential benefits for Amanita poisoning in acute liver failure per se. So so both of those were initiated. They say by August 2nd, the following day, how was his condition? So it was like the 31st when they got to the Austin, then the 1st, now the 2nd. The professor replies he had deteriorated further, unfortunately, and had worsening, and particularly his circulation increasingly compromised, and further support was, given to him. They said by the time of the 3rd and 4th of August, had Donald's condition continued to deteriorate over that time? And they said During that period, they did an ileus, which is a medical term where the bowel is extremely unwell and essentially stops working. The normal function of the bowel ceases. So he had that condition as well. They said, did Donald Patterson undergo surgery on the 4th of August, 2023? And he says, he did. After extensive consultation with a range of senior specialists, it was thought that the only possibility of saving his life was through a liver transplant. And they said, did that occur? And the professor replies, yes. There was an effort to undertake and complete a liver transplant. They said, after the liver transplant, did Donald's condition improve? The professor replies, no. He got relentlessly worse, unfortunately. They said, was it recognized through the day that Donald Patterson was dying despite maximal therapy? And they said, yes. All of our treatments had unfortunately failed, and he was dying despite all of the measures that we were applying. And they said here, did clinicians conclude? This is from Miss Lenthal again, the prosecution. Did the clinicians conclude that there was no other treatment options that would help Donald, and this was a non-survivable for him? And they said, the professor replies, we had no other treatments to offer. There were no other therapies, and so yeah, he was dying. And they said, did he ultimately pass away at 11:30 p.m. on the 5th of August? And the professor replies, that's what I recall, yes. And they said, was that due to refractory multiple organ failure secondary to acute liver failure due to clinically diagnosed Amanita mushroom poisoning? And he says that is correct. So that was the evidence given for Don Patterson. That's his final moments, basically, at the Austin, and all the medical care that they had tried to do to save his life. They really had. They tried very hard, and including a liver transplant. So they said, like, as you heard in the evidence, even after the liver transplant, he just aggressively got worse, even after they tried to do that. And you'll hear a little bit more about the two women, Gail and Heather. I think we're going to hear from Heather first. Are we? No. So it was Don and Gail that got there first, which makes sense. They're husband and wife. We're gonna hear about Gail Patterson. So that's his wife, Don's wife. And they're gonna say here, did Gail Patterson also arrive at the hospital on the 31st of July at 8 p.m.? And he says, that's my recollection. And they say, she was the second of 4 patients to arrive. And he says, yes. They say, is it the case that, similar to Don Patterson, the Austin received information about the clinical history? They say, yes. Similar, same thing, acute onset vomiting and diarrhea, and that she attended Corumburra Urgent Care Center and ended up being transferred to Dandenong. And they say, yes. Similar to Donald, blood tests and investigation showed acute liver failure. He says that's correct. And that she had been transferred to the Austin for similar reasons that Donald had been transferred. He says yes. And they said she was also intubated and had received a number of therapies or treatments similar to Donald. Yes, again. So NAC, silvernin, activated charcoal. Yes. And they also did other exploratory things to try to find an alternate cause to their illness. They could not identify any other contributing factors or alternate causes. And they say here, in an absence of alternate explanations, that they highly they thought highly that it was Amanita poisoning because it was highly consistent with the clinical diagnosis for Amanita poisoning. And he says, yes, it was quite a typical presentation and for Amanita. And they said, we have been discussing Gail's treatment on the 31st of July. How was her condition by the next day, 1st of August? And he replies, she was rapidly deteriorating. She was in advanced state of multiple organ failure with her organs essentially shutting down and in an advanced state of shock. And they said, as they did for Donald, did clinicians commence some additional treatments for Gail at that time, including vitamin C and plasma exchange? And they say, yes, that's correct. And they say, how was her condition by the 2nd of August? And they say, the professor replies, she remained extremely unwell to the point where, from a clinical perspective, her liver was essentially not working at all. Oh my God, who keeps ringing? Hold on, guys. 1 sec. Oh, you going to answer that or? You don't have to. Hold on, guys. All right, sorry. We had someone have to take a phone call. All right, and they said, did she receive maximal treatment therapy? And he replied, she was on everything that we had. They said, it was an emergency liver transplant considered for Gail. He says there was a lot of discussion about whether it was possible to undertake for her. Given the advanced state of her multiple organ failure, it was certainly considered. And they said, did she ultimately have that liver transplant? And he says, no, she did not. The consensus opinion of all the contributing senior specialists from ICU, the liver transplant unit, and toxicology was that she was too sick to undergo the necessary surgery. And they say on the 3rd and 4th of August, did Gail's condition continue to decline? They said, yes, she progressively became further unwell. And they said that they performed an x-ray on her and that it likely showed that she had gut ischemia. So that's where your bowel and stomach die. It's like they call it dead bowel. And they say that's correct. And that was considered to be an extremely grave prognosis from that point. And they say basically it is blood supply to the bowel or the gut has stopped flowing, and that section of the bowel has ultimately died. And they said, did Gail Patterson ultimately pass away? And he replies, she did. And they said, was that at 5:55 p.m. on the 4th of August, 2023? And he says, yes. And they say, was that due to multiple organ failure resulting from acute liver failure due to clinically diagnosed Amanita mushroom poisoning? And he says that is correct. And they go on to Heather and Ian here. Very, very similar. The evidence very similar. Critically ill, abnormalities of liver function. They tried a number of therapies, including the psilocybin and multi-dose activated charcoal, intravenous vitamin C, and they did the same investigations trying to find an alternate cause. They couldn't find anything, and they basically came to the same conclusion that it was Amanita poisoning. They ask here, how was Heather Wilkinson's condition by the 2nd of August 2023? And he replies, she had rapidly progressive deterioration of her multiple organ function or multiple organ failure. So her entire organs were just shutting down and she had organ failure basically. They said, was a decision made to list her for an emergency liver transplant? He says there were discussions about whether that would be possible. Yes. And they ask, was it possible? He says, ultimately, no. She was too unwell to undergo the complex and extensive surgery required for a liver transplant. They said after extensive consultation between the medical teams, was it acknowledged that Heather was not going to survive? The professor replies, "It was very apparent that this was not survivable." Yes. They said, "Did she ultimately pass away?" He says, "She did." And they say, "Was that at 2:05 a.m. on the 4th of August, 2023?" And he says, "Yes, that's correct." Same diagnosis. Was that due to acute liver failure and multiple organ failure with a clinical diagnosis of Amanita mushroom poisoning? And he says that is correct. They move on to the fourth person in this one, and it's Ian Wilkinson, the only known person to survive. Why his is so different, not even sure, but I will tell you what they said in evidence today and about how he received treatment and recovered. He details it right here. And they say he was the fourth patient to arrive. He says, yes, fourth and last. Did you receive the same clinical information? Yes, that he'd also been to Leongatha Hospital and then transferred to Dandenong? Yes. So let's move further down here. And it says they underwent further investigation looking for an alternate cause for his liver failure. And they said that was negative. No other causes for acute liver failure were identified. And they said again, they found, and their consensus was that it was due to Amanita mushroom poisoning. And they say, how was Ian Wilkinson's condition by the 2nd of August? And the professor replies, he was extremely unwell with advanced multiple organ failure. By August 3rd, he became more unwell, deteriorated further, particularly his circulation was requiring considerable more support. They said, did you commence a plasma exchange on that date? He says, I think it was on the 3rd, yes. They ask, on the 4th of August, did he continue to deteriorate? And the professor replies, yes, the acid in his blood was higher and he needed additional support for his circulation, and he had developed an abnormal heart rhythm. They said, so on the 4th of August, they were worried that there might be an evolving intra-abdominal catastrophe such as ischemic bowel or deep gut. And so a laparotomy was undertaken to assess for that. And they said no significant bowel pathology was found, no significant abnormalities in the bowel. And they said, how was Ian Wilkinson's condition changing over the next few days? So the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. They said there was some slow but important improvement over the next several days. And they said, did he continue to improve over the days that followed? And they said, it was very slow because he was coming from a situation of extremely critical illness, but he did slightly improve over that time. And they said, was he eventually extubated, so taking the tube out, on the 14th of August? They said, yes. They said, was he discharged from ICU on the 21st of August? Yes. Was he discharged to a rehab ward at Heidelberg Repatriation Hospital on the 11th of September? And that is yes. And he was eventually discharged to go home. And the professor replies, yes. How close did Ian Wilkinson come to dying? The professor replies, we thought he was going to die. It was very close. They said, can you just explain what extubated means? They say, so when someone is on an artificial life support of mechanical ventilation or a breathing machine, the breathing machine is connected to the patient through a tube, through their mouth, and into their windpipe or trachea. And extubation is removal of that breathing tube so the patient can essentially breathe on their own with some oxygen with a mask, for example. Yeah, so that is it. That is it. That was all the evidence we got today. But it details their different time at the Austin 3 of them ultimately died. Ian survived. He did. I'm pretty sure he did receive one. Why it's not detailed in this particular evidence, I don't know. But in my notes, I don't have that question. I don't know why they didn't go through it. Let me just make sure I didn't miss it. They did up here. Just trying to check if they actually go into it. Okay, Ian. Yeah, they don't for Ian, they don't go into it. I'm not 100% sure why, but they don't go into it. But I'm pretty sure it's a known fact that he had a liver transplant. I'm not sure why. I don't know. I'm not part of the prosecution, so I don't know. Not to sound dumb, but what is the physical therapy for after? Don't know. They haven't gone into that. I wouldn't know what he did at the rehab hospital, but being that he was in a coma or sedated so heavily for so long, you probably get things like muscle wastage and probably when you have a transplant or all these type of exploratory operations looking for different causes of your liver failure, there's probably a lot of surgery and scarring and things that probably take a lot of work that you have to do rehab, sitting up, learning how to use those muscles again. There's probably a lot of things like that. He was in hospital for a long time. You're talking he went into hospital on around the 31st of July, right? After the lunch. And he was in there until what was the date? So he was sent to the repatriation hospital on the 11th of September and eventually went home. But he was in hospital for like over a month, a long period of time, more like 6 or 7 weeks. It's almost 2 months in a hospital, half of it in a coma, and he was only extubated. When did they say they extubated him? 2 weeks. So he was in ICU on a mechanical breathing for like close to 15 days. So he was under for about 15 days. And they brought him out of the coma or sedation on the 15th of August. And he went there on like the 31st or the 1st. So that's a long period of time to be under. As someone who has been in a coma for multiple weeks. I was in a coma for 2 weeks when I was younger. I was under for 2 weeks. And I can tell you that when you come out of it, it's almost like you're sleeping and you wake up and you're like, wait, where did 2 weeks go? There is some rehab and things you have to do because you haven't walked in 2 weeks. You haven't eaten anything in multiple weeks. And you have to build up your strength and there's surgery, scarring. So I would say it would be very similar for him. And considering, like, look at what they went through: liver failure and multiple organ failure. I can't imagine what that would do to your body or how long you would need to recover. But if there is some rehab that you need, it's not surprising, all right? Almost like they said, how close to death was Ian? And they said it was very close, to the point where they thought he was going to die. They didn't think it was going to work. Somehow he recovered very slowly, and they said they saw little tiny signs every day that he was improving and the arrow was going this way, not that way. And they saw that as a positive because none of the other three had shown any improvement. They all showed decrease, like going downhill. They all just showed like negative, and he's the only one that showed like a positive. So they kept supporting him, and eventually he got better. It's amazing the work they did. They work so hard, these people at the Austin, to try and save all of them, but it only worked for one of them. Why? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea, but only worked for one of them. Someone gave away membership? Who did that? Doesn't say. It doesn't say. I think I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I thought you bought it. I was like, I don't see a gifting thing there. So thanks for that. I appreciate it though. That is the only witness we got today. No one else. So as soon as Professor was done, we were basically kicked out of court. We were like, go home for the weekend, have a long weekend. So that was it. That was it for today. So I know it's a very short update. Fridays normally are because we don't get a lot on a Friday. We only have 2 hours of court. But that is it. That's it. That's all I got for you. But I don't know. I listening to that evidence myself, you're just like they do a lot of work. You think you see all these different things like activated charcoal and vitamin C and NAC and psilocybin and these different kind of exploratory surgeries to look for ischemic bowel and other type of catastrophic bowel injuries, and it's crazy. And I can't imagine them having to do it with 4 people at the same time at the same hospital. They would have been running off their feet. They you know, the Austin in Melbourne. They're well known in Melbourne. So if you don't know the Austin Hospital, I don't want to give too much personal opinion, but the Austin, a lot of people might think they're horrible. Who knows? Who knows what people think about things? Uh, so I can show you where they are located if you'd like. Yeah, let me just have a look here. So the Austin is up here, right here. This is the Austin Hospital, and it's right next to Heidelberg. So Heidelberg is a suburb in the northeast of Melbourne, and this is the Austin Hospital. They have various different parts. I think these are outpatient, emergency. These are all wards and pathology. There's more on this side. This is where ladies have babies, I think. On this side, you can see obstetrics and gynecology, all the fun parts of medicine sometimes. And here, what else we got? Yeah, just all different things. Like you got all different parts of the hospital. A mortuary, Austin Hospital mortuary. I've never seen that listed before. Is that somewhere you visit or? And this is interesting too. The Victorian Poisons Information Center, VPIC. We heard about VPIC a bunch this week, and they are the people you call when they're like, "Hey, I went mushrooming and I ate a mushroom and now I feel sick." And they're like, "Send us a photo of the mushroom and we'll talk to our mycologist who is on call and we'll see whether you ate a death cap mushroom or not." And you're like, "Fine, how long will you call me back?" They're like, "We'll call you back when we know." And they're like, "All right." That is sort of what they do. They are for it's not just for mushrooms. They do kids who eat cell batteries, like those little circle batteries. Kids who do that. Maybe a kid drank the nicotine from their parents' vaping device. Like they do all sorts of poison and chemical analysis. Kids might get into the bathroom cupboard and drink the Ajax or something. Like billion different things, not just Amanita phalloides. Hey, Zelda. Zelda. Oh, Zelda, Zelda. Hey, my friend. How are you? I was like, Zelda, Zelda, Rags to Rich. I was like, I don't know this person. And I was like, no, wait, I do know Zelda, Zelda. How are you, my friend? You're in hospital recently? Oh, you had a bowel obstruction? Yeah, I can tell you, I know too much about that subject due to personal issues, and it's not very nice. So I'm glad that you're feeling better. I'm glad that you're feeling better, my friend. Yeah, I can't send you a photo because I ate it. Yeah, that might happen sometimes with VPIC. Zelda, it's good to see you, my friend. It really is. I haven't seen you in ages, like a year maybe. It's good to see you. Yeah, but I ate the mushroom. How to photograph it? Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure how you would do that. I'm not sure. But you guys are making me laugh, which I have to be very serious. It's court reporting, all right? It's court reporting. It's not laughter reporting. You're a prayer warrior? I think you could give some to the entire chat, maybe. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the coverage this week and for the 4 weeks of the trial. I can't believe it's been 4 weeks. It has gone like that. It's really gone quickly. I remember being like first day opening statements and going, what am I going to do with all this? I've got all this information and I'm like, how do I work with this? How do I present it? How do I tell people? So, but we're 4 weeks into it now, and I think you guys get the most up to date and the most detailed version of the information that I can give you. I haven't seen anyone else who gives this much sort of information. There's like media and stuff, and they give some context and information, but not everything. And I try to give you guys basically everything I'm legally allowed to. Yeah, we're in sort of that we're sort of in that part of the trial where we we're over the hump and we're sort of like marching to the finish line. When is that? I have no idea. I don't think they haven't told us anything. They don't, we're just reporters. They don't tell us anything like that. They just like do your job, watch the court and report things. They don't do anything for us really. They just are focused on the jury, making sure people don't report the wrong things, making sure rules are followed and stuff like that. It's not what you guys think. We don't get advance notice of anything like that. They're not like, hey, it's going to finish on the 22nd or something like. No, we know as much as the public does about when it might finish. Which so whatever you know, I know, and if you don't know anything, I don't know anything about that. So that's sort of how it works. But being that they booked it in for 6 weeks, even if we do go the entire way, it's only 2 more weeks. So we are sort of over that halfway point already. That's it. Chipmunk says, I've been getting my info from you much more nice than the news. I appreciate it. And all the new subscribers, we've had heaps. I don't have a number in front of me. I think it was 150 something at one point. I appreciate all those people. I really do. It's been, I promise you, it's been like working 2 full-time jobs because I go to court, then I have to come back and make all the content. So it's like working an 8-hour job and then coming home and working for another 5 hours. So it's just one of those things because we can't report from the courtroom. I'm not allowed to. So yeah. You got to wink at the right people? No. Oh, that's interesting. We may cover that tomorrow night. Do you have a copy of it? Of the actual document? If you do, send it to me, please. Rachel says you're doing great, Ping. We have heaps of things to talk about. So tomorrow night we'll have a late show. And then on Sunday for Australia, Saturday for Australia, we'll have a late show. We're going to be covering that Queensland case, the missing girl. There's a girl missing out of Queensland, Australia, and we'll be covering that. I've been watching it all week. I've been keeping on top of it. Very strange case out of Queensland, if you haven't seen it yet. There's a 17-year-old girl who was apparently dropped at an airport, and then they checked the airport footage, and they're like, wait, she never went to the airport. Not she never was at this particular airport. So there's some suspicion around certain people. There's some stuff going on. So stuff going on. We'll cover that, I promise. Car fire. A 9mm Glock. Well, they're pretty common. Okay, I appreciate it. Hey, Sean, good to see you. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. It's been a long week. It's been a funny week in court. A lot of the other ones have been very sort of, you get in, you get all the witnesses, and you sort of go. But this week's been a little up and down, and there's stuff that's happened and changes and times and just, that's when you sort of know you're getting to the pointy end of everything, when things start being not what the other weeks were. So it was all right. In the end, we heard from a lot of different people, and hearing from the guy from the Austin today was a big deal, I think, just to have that evidence done and get it out, get it out of the way. So that was all finished. And I don't know who we have next week. I know everyone wants to know, but I have no idea. They don't tell us in advance. So we'll know on Monday morning at 10:30, then they'll tell us. Okay, well, send me that too. Thank you to all of you. I appreciate it. I'm gonna enjoy an early Friday where I'm not going to be working at 10 o'clock at night and not have to do a live show at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I'm going to enjoy my night, and I'll be back tomorrow about this same time, about midnight on the East Coast of America, and we'll have a late show. We've got a lot to catch up on, a lot. Dateline being very bad, Coburger stuff, missing girl in Queensland. There's been Amber Alerts. There's a lot of different things I haven't been able to report on because Monday to Friday I have to do the court stuff. But there's a lot of true crime that we haven't talked about this week. So we'll do all of it tomorrow. We'll catch up with the Canadian search of the 2 missing children, Jack and Lily. We'll do that tomorrow night too. And we'll have a bit of fun. We'll have some fun. We'll all unwind from a long week. A long week. We'll have some fun, talk some true crime. Ping will probably tell some jokes because I like to do that when I'm not forced not to. And yeah, have a great night, everyone. Have a great night. Have a great night. Yeah, and then Saturday I'll be back on websleuths.com for a very special Saturday night show, and you'll learn more about our friend who passed away. You'll learn a lot more about that. So that was some very sad news recently, unfortunately. And on Saturday night, I'll tell you some more stories about her. So I'll see you then. Love you all. Peace out. Enjoy your Friday in America. If you're in Australia, TGIF, go have a beer. I want a beer. I might have a beer. Maybe. I think I'm old enough to do that. I think so. At 40, I think I could do that. All right. Okay. Yes, you can email me or text message or whatever. A friend of ours passed away about a week ago. But talk to Trish about it. Like, yes, she was my friend too, but it's Trisha's story to tell, and we'll do that on Saturday night. We'll do that on Saturday. So see you then. Have fun. Peace out. Bye.